welcome back to another episode with the Wild Thoughts Podcast. Woo! So today's episode, it's another interesting one. We're going to be talking about codependency versus being just emotional or very emotional, what the differences are, and how to kind of overcome both of maybe those situations as well. So
all right, so let's start with our high of the week.
Yes.
Afi, do you want to go first?
I can start. Okay, I thought about this on my way here. I forget, but I love this. So mine is actually this week I fasted for the first time other than during the month of Ramadan. So I was doing it for spiritual reasons because as a Muslim, when you fast during the month of Ramadan, as a woman, you have your menstrual cycle, and when you have your menstrual cycle, you cannot fast. So you have to remake those days. I have not remade those days in a long time. So I decided to start. And because it's coming up March 23rd, it's kind of practice for me. But it's also, you can fast whenever you want. It's never like only this time. It just allows you to kind of like reconnect and like be grounded. But I did it for the first time during work. I was really proud of myself because it wasn't too difficult. But like I like pushed myself to do it without doing it when I'm not forced to, but like when it's Ramadan, you feel more of the pressure to do it because you're like, okay, this month is important. I have to fast. But I did it, and I woke up in the middle of the night to eat, like, because you're supposed to eat. Okay,
so I was gonna ask, you did the like full fast,
full fast
all day you didn't
exactly
eat.
Until sundown, basically. Okay. But sundown was at like 5:50. Like it's the earlier.
I thought there was like a certain hour that it's like, okay, now.
Yeah, so it's every time at sundown, but sundown changes, right? Because of like, I don't know, the sun. Yeah. I don't want to be wrong.
The rotation of the earth around the sun.
Exactly. And Ramadan happens every year 10 days before because it's based on like the Islamic calendar. Okay. So it like changes. Yeah, I guess it's because of, I don't know, the moon or the sun. Sorry. Okay. But yeah, so that's why now it's a bit easier because the days are shorter. So it compared to the summer,
Okay, that's really cool. I didn't know you had to make up the days.
Yeah, so when you're supposed to do full 30 days, and if you miss them, you're supposed to make them up.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
If you can, if you're like healthy enough to like do, because like Ramadan is not forced upon people that aren't like capable physically, mentally. It's really if you can, but you're not forced to.
And it's just to get in touch with your like spiritual side.
There's a lot of like reasons to it. So there's a lot of actual physical benefits of fasting if you're eating properly. Like obviously if you're eating like fried food to break your fast, it's not gonna, but it's also just like first feeling what other people that are less fortunate, so like the poor and and this month we're supposed to give a lot of charity, so really like just being literally like a better person. That's the whole point. And you're supposed to kind of reduce like things that are distracting in life, like TV, too much TV. Like you shouldn't do your fast and watch TV all day. It's not that it's bad, and I'm not saying your fast won't count. It's just that you're supposed to connect with God and take times to do like more things that will bring you closer to like God and religion, like reading the Quran or like learning, I don't know, reading a book even, just kind of more like, I don't know how to, there's like simple things.
Like a lifestyle check? Kind of,
in a way. It's just like to become more like spiritual and take out like artificial things in your life. Okay. You know, like really come to like the natural source and and just allow, because like with our distractions, it kind of sometimes can take us away. Like, for example, I could be like, oh, I don't know, I don't want to learn about this because I want to watch my show or something like that. So it just really to like allow you to connect to yourself, but God, but there's other reasons too. I don't know all of them, but it's not just fasting from just food and water, like Hailey Bieber and you can just, that got me so pissed. I saw that live and I was like, I never saw it before. And I was like,
some of the shit, like, oh my God, they're so dumb.
Haley was like giggling and she was like,
they're stupid.
I'm gonna smack your giggle off your face.
They're really stupid. Okay, well, I love that.
Yeah, thank you. That was a long explanation. Sorry.
No, it was good. For mine, again, I had a rough week.
Oh no, Kathy.
But it's okay because now next week I'm taking it off, so at least. But the high of this week, I spent some time with Anna one-on-one. We haven't done that in a while, and it felt very nostalgic because I just invited her over so we can binge watch American Horror Story.
I love that.
Yeah, we used to do that all the time, like when they were first coming out, and then like we just ordered food and we had snacks. It felt very nostalgic.
So fun.
And it was very calming. Like, to be honest, we didn't talk that much because like I was exhausted, but it was just like we're just enjoying the show, you know?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it was nice.
Once this is the first time my friend had ever done this, but yeah, she was like, we were hanging out, but then by text she was like, can we just like watch a movie and not really and she didn't
I needed it.
talk, but she wanted to do something very like relaxed,
Yeah,
because we were both like mentally dead. So yeah, that's so nice.
yeah, it was nice.
Yeah. It's nice to be one-on-one with friends that like for a long time, and just like do something cozy.
Yeah, and it was fun because like we used to always do stuff in my basement. We were in my basement, just watch it. Like it felt very nostalgic, you know?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it was nice.
I need that. Yeah. Okay. I watched, what is it called, the fashion up next
in fashion. I literally just finished it yesterday.
But I only watched the first episode of season 2 episodes of season 2.
Yeah,
that's it.
so I didn't realize I was watching season 2 because I never finished season 1. So it was automatically showing me season 2, but it's so good.
It's really good because I'm not used to watching reality shows where they're like competitions. I'm more like watch the dating reality shows.
It kind of feels like RuPaul's Drag Race, but just like focus on the fashion.
Exactly.
You know?
But I feel like the host, sometimes I'm like, I just want to see, like, I'm like, because they're always like checking in and giving. I know.
Well, that's what they do.
Know,
that's what it's same thing like
talking.
Food competitions. They do that too.
I know. I was sleepy last night. I was like, I fell asleep.
No, but like it amazes me that people can just sew like that.
Dude, I was so excited to see the runway and like what they came up with.
It's crazy. And the themes that they get, it's intense.
Yeah.
And so the finale, what they have to do is the 3 people in the finale have to make 8 looks, do like a whole collection.
But they have like more time.
Yeah, and they have like people to help them sew too, at least.
Okay, that's
But I was
good.
like, this is insane.
Yeah, because they're coming with the design, so now it's just more like putting. And we were watching episode 2, and they had to work in teams. And I was like falling asleep, but I could hear the little drama.
Yeah.
Oh, how was it working?
Oh, that one was rough. I was watching it. I'm like, they don't know what they're doing.
Oh my, yeah, it was like the flower one. Like they had to incorporate like nature in their dress.
Yeah, the bride, and I was like,
I didn't see the final.
Bro,
looks,
that one was rough. I was like, they are not gonna win. You knew.
It's rough out here.
Yeah, but anyways, it's a really good show, so you should watch it.
Yeah, we're gonna get into it.
So we're first going to start with why is there such a thin line between them? So I feel like it's very hard off the top of my head just to distinguish between like someone who's codependent or someone who's just very emotional. So we're going to kind of dive deep into that. I have some quotes for you guys. So there's a quote from Vicky Botnick, who's a marriage and family therapist, and she was quoted in like a bunch of the research that I found. So I think she knows her shit about this.
Yeah. Incredible.
So they said codependency can be defined as any enmeshed relationship in which one person loses their sense of independence and believes they need to tend to someone else. So basically, codependency is just wanting to fix someone and feeling attached to someone because you think you can solve all their problems and you want to be their go-to person, and you kind of neglect yourself for it and lose your sense of identity in the process. There's also an Every Girl blog post that was talking about codependency, and it said codependents describe themselves as easily adaptable to their situations without showing consistently who they truly are. This study called it the chameleon self.
Oh, that's what the word is. I don't know why in my head.
Shyamalan. Oh my god.
Yo,
I'm dead.
Like I was like, what's that with chameleon?
I'm keeping this in. That's so funny.
It's okay. You can keep my little embarrassing moments. And hey, I'm not scared to admit it.
It happens. So it's basically reiterating that you kind of don't show your true self because you just want to please the other person, and you're just trying to solve everything and just want to be there for them, and that's it. And you kind of just don't focus on yourself. You don't show your true self because you just focused on their own satisfaction.
Right. Yeah.
So this blog post also spoke about how these people that were in the study felt trapped in their past relationships because they're so focused on people pleasing, and they didn't know how to get out of that. Yeah, exactly.
So I didn't realize though, like to me, it didn't click right away that like being emotional is also very much related to codependency, but there's also a difference, obviously. But it makes sense because if you're attached to someone and like you're very like emotions are involved, so
it kind of creates this like unhealthy obsession with the other person because you care about them so much that you want to fix everything and you just want them to be happy.
Exactly.
You know? It's also a very thin line because if you're just very empathetic, compassionate, and emotional person, it doesn't necessarily mean you're very dependent on the other person. It could just mean that your sense of compassion for others just stems from like a very spiritual place. So you just want other people to be happy. But as you're going to see later on, there's some symptoms that can kind of differentiate whether you're emotional versus codependent.
There's also something known as like highly sensitive people.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I'm one of those where like you really like put yourself in other people's shoes, but does not mean you're codependent.
It's just empathy. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this I found super interesting. So it said that people with narcissistic tendencies find a sort of comforting self-protection when using the term codependence. So they interpret their own self-centered behavior as admirable non-codependency. So they kind of like...
They don't see as problematic.
Exactly. But it's just because they think they're like, it's the savior complex. So they think they're high and mighty because they know how to fix a person, and like this person loves them so much. They're so cared for, and they're like, I know what to do and I know how to make you happy. And like that's where the narcissism comes in.
Right. Like almost like the hero in the situation in a way. Like you said, saving them.
Exactly. Narcissistic people use the term codependency to kind of like put a band-aid on their behavior.
Right. Make it more acceptable.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they're actually being counter-dependent because they're kind of like...
Because they're only thinking about themselves,
exactly.
basically.
And they're having like a disdain for showing emotions, and like, oh, I don't... You know?
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Does that?
No, it does. I just didn't... How does narcissistic go into codependency? Is it just because it's the opposite?
It's the opposite, but they try to hide their actual feelings by labeling it
themselves as codependent. Oh, I didn't know narcissistic people do that.
Yeah, because they have the savior complex, but at the same time, they don't really care for you. They care more about themselves. So they're
is that what we were just...
Yes.
Sorry. My brain...
It's okay. If it doesn't make sense to you, it probably doesn't make sense to them.
I just disassociated and forgot that's what we were talking about right before.
No, it's okay. But does it make sense?
No, it makes sense what you said. Yeah. Okay. It's like covering it up as codependency. But wait, what does a savior complex have to do with it again? Because for narcissistic people?
Yeah, narcissism, like you think you're high and mighty. So like when they're in relationships, sometimes they feel like they can have the upper hand and they know how to make the person happy. So they're going to find solutions to things, but it's for their own benefit.
Okay, I get it. So that's like, it may seem similar to codependency, but it's actually not, because it's more for their own benefit than the other. Got you. That makes sense.
That's just like, that's like a sub point to all this, like...
Right. No, I get it. Like, it's not exactly codependency, but it's related to why people mask themselves as being codependent.
Exactly.
I got you.
Because sometimes people use it as a very loose term. So it's either sometimes used because you feel like someone is very emotional.
Yeah.
Or narcissists use it for themselves to mask their behavior.
That makes sense.
Okay.
I got... No,
sorry for
it's my fault.
All those that are confused.
Okay, so we're going to continue into codependency and how it's heavily influenced by childhood trauma. So we'll give some examples. So some of this is taken from Psych Central. And is this a doctor or a psychologist? So Botnick?
It's the same person we mentioned before.
Okay.
But just in a different article.
Yeah, exactly. Botnick. So some situations and key things that might lead to codependency can be physical, emotional, or sexual abuse. So anything that happened growing up or in your environment. Even parents or caregivers that ignore a child's need in favor of their own. So kind of that selfishness and not really taking care of like the children and other people around and more putting your needs first. Also, a caregiver with a personality disorder such as borderline, narcissistic, or dependent personality disorder, which may encourage you to suppress your self-identity to accommodate them. So I feel like this is a lot of like when other people aren't doing well, you're having to take care of them and compensate, and you're not given like the care that you need, and someone asking you like, what are your needs? How can I like be there for you? So that makes sense that it comes from them. And then controlling or overprotective caregivers who prevent a child from learning safe limits and setting healthy boundaries. Yeah, because I feel like at that point, people are always doing the work for you and telling yourself what you need rather than you being able to recognize like, what are my boundaries, etc.
Yeah, I think there's always like unhealthy balance that stems from the childhood. It's either like your parents don't show enough or they show too much, so you're trying to compensate for the other end of it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. The possibility of one or both parents leaving the family, which makes you afraid of future abandonment, which I feel like is very linked to like codependency, like feeling like someone's gonna leave you, and kind of doing everything in your power to make them happy so that they stay beside you. So there's a lot of different things obviously that go into it. There's also the possibility of caregivers alternating between loving and present and distant and unavailable. So they're contributing to an anxious attachment style. Yeah. So that makes sense. Like it has a lot to do with like attachment styles and like how you were loved as a child.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
It's kind of confusing if like someone's in your life, but then they like become distant, give you attention, and then don't give you attention. So it's very confusing.
Especially for a child.
Exactly. And at that point, I feel like it's hard to become self-aware. Like you don't even know what codependency is. You're just like building yourself. So, and then lastly, criticism and bullying from parents, siblings, or peers that leaves you with lingering insecurity in relationships. Obviously, that also has to do with your self-esteem, I feel like. And codependency is very much related to like self-esteem and having low self-esteem. So if you're being bullied and criticized growing up, then it's obviously gonna mess with what you think of yourself and your own thoughts.
And now that's going to kind of lead us into like specific symptoms that you can look out for to see if you're codependent. So first, we've said this before, but codependents gravitate towards people that they feel like need them or need help. So this can be someone who struggles with addiction, mental or physical illnesses, emotional immaturity, like anyone that you look at that you're like, I can fix you, that's who they gravitate towards. Usually when you feel like you're needed by someone, it feeds your self-esteem. So exactly what you were saying, people with self-esteem issues need to find someone that can validate that. So if someone's heavily dependent on other people, it's because they know that they need them and they're going to be there for them and they want to be that number one person that you go to. It's also a false belief that we're needed because we can't be rejected or abandoned. So everyone who has like not a weakness to them, but what's the better word for that? Like, I guess it's a weakness in the eyes of the codependent where if you feel like someone is kind of lesser than you and needs that help, you feel like they can't escape you
Like
and they can't reject you.
Something?
Yeah, exactly. Because they're in a vulnerable position. That's what I want.
That's a good.
Yeah, they're vulnerable. So this codependent is like, I'm going to attach myself to them because they're not going to leave me because they need someone.
And like without you, they're like all over the place.
Exactly.
Or like not I don't know what the other word is.
Exactly. But. Yeah. The next symptom is a lack of boundaries. So you try to fix people's problems or fix people even when they're not asking you to, or you give unsolicited advice without considering what the other person really wants. And to others, that can feel more like meddling than caring. So that can cause some tension in the relationship because you're doing things which people independently could do. And they're kind of like, okay, whoa, take a step back. I can do this myself.
Yeah, it's like you're making sometimes. Yeah, it's overstepping.
Yeah,
you're like
exactly.
making the
you're
decisions.
Forcing yourself into
yeah,
it.
exactly. Yeah.
Leads to my next point. This can cause resentment to the codependent. So this is the other party, the person who has codependency, because if they're forcing solutions and unsolicited advice on the other person and the other person is not really taking it, that can cause some tension because it's kind of like, well, I'm not able to fix you. Like, what's happening here? And it can cause like anger, frustration, which is obviously not good words in a relationship, right?
Yeah. I feel like the resentment can also go both ways because like you said, how the other partner may not want the advice. So it creates resentment because it's like, wait, why are you feeling all my emotions, taking my decisions?
Then, like we mentioned before, a lack of self-worth. So if you need validation from other people in order to be like, okay, yeah, I'm the number one person in their life. Like this person's always going to need me. So I'm always going to be there. They're always going to be there for me, blah, blah, blah. That's going to feed your ego because you're tricking your mind into thinking like this person is also dependent on you. So again, it goes back to the fear of rejection and abandonment situation.
Yeah, it's true. It's like, it's almost like you're making in your head that this, like you said, the recurring theme is like this person needs you, but that's just what you're telling yourself.
Exactly.
So you can continue to do what you need to do to cope with whatever it is.
Yeah. Then there's something called separation angst. So this is when your mood like insanely shifts if you're not around the other person, if the person is choosing to hang out with other people. Let's say you're in a relationship and the person wants to go hang out with their friends one night and you're like, mood is shot. You're kind of like angry and frustrated because you're like, you think it's just you missing the person so much, but it's actually like, if it's causing your entire day to shift, that's not a good sign.
Yeah. And I feel like it links into also like not knowing what the other person is doing or like feeling. So you can't really have like, I'm not saying codependent people always want like control, but it's almost like you don't know. So the uncertainty is like bothering you because you don't know what they're thinking, what they're doing, what they're talking about. So that leaves you in like the unknown a little bit.
And if you're naturally a very like caring person, it's normal that you can miss the person, but to the point where your whole mood is shifting because of it, that's where it kind of gets rocky and like the codependency comes in.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Of course, you're putting others first. So like we said before, you're trying to fix the person. So you're kind of neglecting your own emotions, your own time and enjoyment because you just want to bring satisfaction to this other person. Yeah. So you're kind of just like, your identity is not showing through, basically. And then finally, you might be unable to break up with a person. So sometimes there comes a point where you recognize that you're both unhappy or you recognize that it's a toxic relationship, but you yourself might feel guilty because you're like, I wasn't able to solve this problem. And for you, you can't detach from the situation because you're like, I need to fix the problem before I leave.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. It's like their problems become your problems.
Exactly. Yeah. So you won't want to break up because you're like, I need to fix the situation. I can't just leave it like this.
Yeah.
Or if you do leave, it's because you have another person lined up that can replace the person.
Oh. Whoa.
That's rough. So when I was reading this, I thought of Julian in Montreal.
Oh my God.
Because
wait, who are you talking? I was like, are you talking about?
Because very relevant.
He's
If you haven't watched Montreal, sorry, but like it's been a minute, so watch it. When he was in a good relationship with Brooke and like everything was going fine, then after what's her name came in, the actress came in.
Yeah, I forgot her name.
Yeah, and she was having a lot of like mental health problems, depression. She kind of became like a little bit obsessed with him. But then she like tried to self-harm and all that stuff. So then he got attached to her because it was someone that he can fix. And he lost his mom at a young age. So it's kind of just proving our point here. That's like, he's the epitome of codependency. Yeah.
She really hates Julian.
I hate Julian.
I get it. He's kind of annoying. Like his manners are a bit annoying.
It kind of gives me the ick, but
yeah.
I can't.
I think it's like the way he like his
yeah.
Anyway.
But anyways,
that's something else.
Yeah. So I could just remind myself that that's exactly who came to mind when I was reading this.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. But wouldn't the actress be codependent on him?
No, because Baby. I think she had like an unhealthy obsession because it was someone she couldn't have.
Yeah.
But then he started like always being there for her, always being the number one, but he was in a whole other relationship.
True.
You know what I mean?
You're right.
It's because Brooke even said it in the show, like, you want to fix her. That's why you're so obsessed with her right now.
Brooke Davis, queen. Okay, so now we're going to just give some examples of questions that you can ask yourself if you're still unsure if you're codependent, and based on your answers you can kind of evaluate where some of the not your flaws, but where it could have went wrong and what you can improve on. So we'll go through a few. There's obviously like a bunch you can ask, but we'll go through a few. So the first one is, do you want to give unwanted advice? So I think the very important word is unwanted. It's obviously it's obviously okay to give advice, and you know, you have friends around you or your relationships, that's normal. Like, people are going through stuff, but if you're always giving advice when it's not needed, then maybe you need to question like why you're doing that and when is it happening. Like, just be aware of like when a conversation is going up, am I just randomly giving advice when it's not really asked of you? So yeah. Then the next one, do you believe that you know what's best? Oh, so it's like you thinking that you always know what the right thing to do is, but that's not actually the case. So kind of evaluate that. Do you repeatedly do things for your partner that he or she is capable of doing?
So this is where like the independency comes in. So
Right.
if someone is very independent and you're trying to like do things for them because you want to be the go-to person, but they're like, I can do this myself.
Exactly. There might be a little problemo.
Yeah.
Not a problem, but something that may be unnecessary or something.
I feel like that is a tricky question though, because it could be like your love language is acts of service and you just like doing things for people, but like it's just when you're doing it consistently to the point where they're like, okay, this is enough. Like I can butter my own toast. You know what I mean?
You're babying them.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Especially if they're already independent.
No, I don't know why I thought of that.
If you're buttering someone's toast, you are no kidding. But you know what we mean. Where obviously these are examples, and every situation is different. And yeah. The next question: does your partner meet your needs? I feel like this is really important because a lot of codependency is like basically you're eliminating yourself and your own needs and what your boundaries are from a relationship. So this is really important, is like kind of knowing what you need in a relationship and realizing if they're being met too, because we don't want a one-sided relationship, right?
Yeah.
Is your giving reciprocated? So it kind of goes into the needs as well, but it's more like what you're giving, are you also getting back? Are you getting the same effort? So it kind of falls into the needs as well. Okay, so the next question is, do you feel guilty saying no to your partner? That's a big... I feel like that comes into the people pleasing.
100%.
Because even if it's your partner, you can still be afraid to say no.
Exactly.
If you're afraid to say no to your friends, like it's possible that... So that's very important to think about that. Next question, do your partner's problems preoccupy... Why'd you do it like that? You did me dirty with that one. Oh god. Okay. That's important, because if you're only thinking about what's problems are going on in your partner's life, what about your own? Like, you're not taking time to think about your feelings, what's going on with you, being present with your own emotions, you know?
It's like you don't have your own individuality.
Exactly.
You're just kind of tied to the other person.
Yeah. And it's almost like you don't want to really, you're like escaping from your own feelings in a way, you know, so that you can take care of someone else's. Next, do you get upset if your advice isn't followed? Oh, I didn't think of this one.
So I feel like in these situations, it's you kind of have to look at the situation at hand. Like if it's constant that any advice that you give to anyone and they're not following it, you get upset about it. I feel like that's when it's codependent.
Yeah.
But if it's a certain situation where we've all had like friends that don't listen to our advice and like do something stupid,
and
like,
then we're like, we told you so. Yeah.
It's like, that's not codependency.
No,
you know?
Exactly. That's more like wanting to be right. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, for sure. That makes sense. There's a difference. And then lastly, is it uncomfortable to listen to another's problem and not offer solutions even when asked? Like almost taking a step back and creating that boundary, and even them ask you, but being like, no, you need to be independent and take, like, that's like a big one. I feel like,
like they're literally asking you, I just need to rant, don't say anything, and you can't. You just have this like fidget that you're like, I need to offer you a solution. Now,
lastly, we're gonna go into how to stop being codependent. Obviously, these are just tips and tricks, so maybe it's not gonna like solve I don't want to call it an issue, but allow you to fully not be codependent and independent, but they're just tips. The first point is something I want to mention before, because I feel like I forgot, but we live in a very hyper-dependent culture. So that's why codependency is seen very negatively. But if you look into other cultures, like
we're a collective
versus
individualist.
Yes, I learned about that once, and I totally forgot about it. So I just want to mention it because obviously there's a lot of different perspectives to it, and this all has to do with culture also. Like in South Asian culture, and now that I think about it, I'm like, oh, okay, makes sense. Because sometimes I look at it as like, oh, that's bad. I think it can be exhausting to be in that collectivist society and always want to please and be there for others, even though it's in your culture. I feel like sometimes it's exhausting, but sometimes this is the norm. This is how cultures act. Like it's the norm to just think about other people before your own and kind of people please in a way. But then we in the Western society live more in an individualistic society. So individualistic society. So we think more of like our personal needs, our own self-care. So neither is bad. So when you're doing these things, just be compassionate with yourself, and it doesn't make you like weak or negative. It's just maybe the way you grew up. Like even the thing about childhood trauma and stuff, because I feel like it's also your parents. Like if for example, my parents grew up in the collectivist society, so they're more like, yeah, people pleasing, and I kind of learned those ways. So that's why I'm saying it's like you kind of have to take some and let some go. Neither is wrong or right, but just see how you feel.
Yeah, I think it comes into play when it's more of an obsession, like something that you have to do because like you think it's in your blood. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, yes, your culture can be very collectivist because even Italians, they're always in your business. Like they want to know what's going on type of thing. But when it comes to a point where it's like hindering the way that you behave in a relationship and you're like neglecting your own self because of it entirely, because like we were saying before, people are compassionate. There are very compassionate people, very emotional people, but at the same time they also can recognize their own feelings. So it's when you're completely cutting off your individual self in order to support and satisfy the other person.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think there's like a line.
Yeah.
Like I said, collectivism isn't bad. It's just that I personally feel, even though I grew up with both, but I feel like some things are very exhausting that I realize. Even if it's a culture that accepts it and you're used to that, you can still feel how exhausting it is, you know? And like Kathy said, it's just if it becomes like an obsession that it's something that is a bit unhealthy. But anyways, just want to put that out there. Yeah, the first point was really just to like be compassionate and also understand that it's not necessarily your fault. Like it could be childhood trauma or things you grew up with, different cultures. Next, this is a good one. So look for signs of healthy relationships. So I feel like this kind of comes into self-awareness. In order to understand why this may be damaging to yourself, you need to understand what the opposite is. So what signs of a healthy relationship is, maybe look around you or do some research. So that way you can be like, okay, these are the differences and this is what I need to adopt in order to have a more successful relationship and just feel more comfortable with myself, you know?
Or listen to our podcast episode about relationship green flags.
Exactly. Hey, that way you'll become more
works.
self-aware of like what's healthy. And then next, boundaries, healthy boundaries. So having healthy boundaries allow you to have a limit about what you're comfortable and uncomfortable with. And this way you don't allow your partner's issues to kind of become your whole identity and kind of consume your own identity. So I think boundaries, like we've spoken about that so much, super dependent and important in codependency because it's basically you not having any and just like no limits.
Yeah, it's kind of like what we were saying in the questions before. If you can't say no to your partner, if you can't like just stop talking and listen to the other partner, like all of those are signs of like lack of boundaries.
Yeah, exactly. So that one's a super good one to establish from the beginning. And then next, taking care of yourself. Codependency also has a lot to do with your self-esteem, which we've mentioned. So usually codependent people have low self-esteem. So in order to build that self-esteem and stop being codependent, you need to know your worth and value by learning more about what makes you happy, what are things that you like to do, what are your needs and wants, and also stopping that negative self-talk. So it's really to like be present with yourself. Who are you as a person? What do you like? Other than fixing someone else's issues and being in their problems, who are you? You know, what's going through your mind? So basically stopping the negative self-talk and thinking about who you are as a person so that you can build your confidence, and make sure to take care of your physical health as well. So eating the right food, rest, and self-care, you need to support your mental well-being because they kind of go hand in hand, obviously. So communicating clearly. So don't try to give people-pleasing responses. Make sure to be direct in your answer. So what we mean by that, for example, if someone asks you, are you free tonight? And you aren't, you say, no, I'm not free tonight. Instead of saying, oh, well, I'm kind of tired. So like justifying.
Yeah.
It's also with that, it comes into with like boundaries and communication. Exactly. It's be true. Don't do little white lies. Mm-hmm. Don't be like, oh no, I have something else. If you don't want to do something, you need to start expressing it, because if not, you're always going to have to come up with an excuse when you don't want to do something. And your friends might, like, people around you might realize, and it's going to be exhausting, and you're always going to have to put up a front when you're with them.
Yeah.
Because you're technically, like, acting as if though you'd always want to hang out, but you just have something, or like...
Yeah. And it's kind of the same thing where it's like you need to take care of yourself, and like you shouldn't be giving excuses for just having self-care as a priority, you know?
And if they don't understand it, that's also a part of the healing and not being codependent, because codependency has a lot to do how other people perceive you and people pleasing. So at one point, you can't care about what they're going to think. You have to feel at peace with giving your answer and feeling valid and validating yourself, you know, without other people's validation. And next, which is exactly what I said, is basically to stop worrying about what other people think. So just when you start thinking about, oh no, this person's gonna think this, think about that you have no control over what happens in other people's minds, and kind of learn to be at peace with that. And like I said, validating your own thoughts, because a lot of times we worry because we want that reassurance that they're fine with it, they're okay with it. But if you're okay with your own answer and you don't feel guilt, then you shouldn't need someone else's validation. So just learn to be at peace with not knowing what they think, because you're never going to know what's going on exactly in someone else's mind.
Yeah, exactly. And it just kind of like, I think everything is tied together here, because if you're codependent, you're probably a people pleaser, you have a lack of boundaries. So it's kind of just like zoning in on yourself and seeing like what you clearly need and want as a person individually. And then people like don't give a shit about you. So like, I mean it in a way that like people care too much about how other people view yourself. So it's kind of like you just have to separate yourself from thinking that way, because they don't care that much. Exactly. You know what I mean? You just have to care about your own self, and you have to be selfish sometimes.
You have to think about what's gonna like be good for you at that point, because whether you disappoint them, that's not gonna make a difference on how exhausted you are or not, you know? So, and lastly, basically releasing attachment to outcome. So this also has to do a little bit with like perception, but when you practice this, you're allowing yourself to be able to tolerate uncertainties and unknown. And this is crucial because codependency has a lot to do with the fear of disappointing someone whose opinion matters to you. So like we said, it's kind of like the people pleasing and being very direct, but releasing outcomes simply means learning to tolerate the possibility of disappointing important people in your life. You remind yourself that your worth and value don't rest on making others happy. So it's basically, it kind of goes into like being okay with the unknown and uncertainty, but it's more to like situations and like not being afraid to disappoint someone and changing your actions based on their happiness. Yeah. Just being okay with whatever is going to happen. So not having an attachment to the end outcome or the end consequence. You shouldn't make your decisions based on what the outcome will be and how it will benefit someone else, but more how you will feel making whatever decision, you know, whatever that outcome is. Well, as long as you're not like harming someone purposefully, but you know what I mean. So hopefully that the last point made sense. It's similar to different things, but yeah, that's the end of it. Did you want to add anything else?
No, I think we said it all.
Okay, awesome.
Well, we hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you did, obviously subscribe to our channel, leave a comment, leave a like, follow us on all the podcast platforms. We're everywhere. Follow us individually. Everything's linked down below. And then follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Wild Thoughts Pod. And that's about it. This is the last episode of season 9. So we go into season 10 soon, which means almost 100 episodes. You already know.
That's crazy. Yeah. Of us.
Yes. And we're going to have something big planned for our 100th episode. So you better be following us everywhere, because or else you won't see it. Yeah. And it's going to be bomb. So yeah. See you in the next one. Bye.